Hi, my name is Dennis Siri. I am Executive Director and founder of the New York City Independent Film Festival, Independent in Spirit, International at Heart, and this is the New York City Independent Film Festival Meet the Filmmakers podcast. Join us while we meet this year's filmmakers. Thank you. Bye bye. Hello, hi. In this episode, we have Andrew, Rob, and Jason. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, my name is Jason O'Mara, and I live in Wilmington, Delaware, and I am the subject of this film.
My name is Andrew Kortina. I spent most of my professional life as a software engineer, and then a few years ago, I decided to spend more time making films, and that's what we did here.
I'm Rob. I live in Brooklyn. Like Andrew, I've spent a lot of my early career just doing software things, and I've always loved film and decided to just be a really fun thing to do together with some friends to try to make some indie films.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, guys. So let's start. Anybody can answer any order you want, have a conversation around it. What made you want to be a filmmaker?
So I studied philosophy and creative writing in college, and then when I graduated, I didn't really feel like I had any ideas for stories. But then, I don't know, maybe a few years ago, kind of right after the pandemic, I felt like building more software companies was probably not the most important thing to be doing for the world. And I thought about like all the things that had inspired me to try to be a better person. Many of them were films, and so I just started studying that and spending my time trying to make things, like trying to put things out there that might inspire other people the same way previous people had inspired me.
I mean, I think I sort of gradually came into trying to make films, and partially it's similar to Cortina, where a lot of things that I've seen have moved me, especially kind of like after school and sort of like living in the world. And I just think it's a really powerful medium. And then just practically, I think we got into it just slowly as something to do together, and we kind of got better and better at it over more and more projects, and it just sort of became, you know, I think as you get better at something, it's just a little.
So you kind of eased into it.
Yeah.
Rather than decide I'm gonna do it. Okay.
I just happened to be a part of this by happenstance. Not to get ahead of the story here, but you know, I was just sitting down with Andrew, having a chat at a bar, and he said, I told him a story, and he said, "Hey, we should record you telling the story." And I said, "Okay, sure, that's fine." Not unbeknownst to me that this was going to actually be a film. So, you know, it's been great being part of this project, because I do have an affinity for film, and I've always wanted to be a filmmaker since a teenager. I'm not a filmmaker. I would never classify myself as a filmmaker, but it's been great being a part of this project.
All right. So what did your friends and family say? Okay, I'm making a living as an IT guy. I'm going to quit, or I'm going to stop doing as much work and start making movies. What was the family and friends' response to all that?
For me, there was no real response. I mean, I sort of do it on the side. I still have a day job doing software. And for a while I took off, you know, some time, year and a half, something like that, where I didn't really have a day job. And is sort of when we made more of this, but it's always just been a sort of like thing I've done on the side. But
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing I did leave my day job as a software engineer, I guess kind of, I don't know, maybe 2021, end of 2021 or something, and have been studying a bunch of film stuff since then. I've done a bunch of online live classes, a bunch of online recorded classes that I found through YouTube and stuff, and have been spending a lot of my time on this and not making any money on it. But sort of despite that, I would say I don't know, I've seen and heard nothing but a lot of support from friends and family. No one has been like, why would you possibly do this? So I don't know. I feel pretty fortunate that I've always had a pretty supportive group of friends and family around me that kind of get that I don't know, we'll just do random things. But I do need to start making money at some point again soon.
Jason, any thoughts?
Yeah, so back in the mid 2000s, before smartphones, uh, my grandfather passed away, and yeah, this is when I was really kind of thinking about what it would mean to make a film. I don't have any formal training in filmmaking, but I went to a local electronics store. I forget what it was. It was Best Buy or something to that effect, and they were selling like kind of like higher like consumer grade cameras at the time, and I didn't really have the money for them, so I borrowed some money, bought one, and filmed the process of my grandfather's funeral, and put together a little film for it. And then I took the camera back and returned it, because again, I didn't have the money for it. I only temporarily borrowed the money for it. So I would say that was around 2004, I think 2005. So I would say, it's been about 15 years since I had an interest in this.
Alrighty, so as filmmakers, do you guys have your tribe, your village that you kind of turn to and hang out with and support each other? Do you have that where you live, where you are?
I have a few friends that I've made through various like writing workshops. I think my sense of my tribe is a little bit more in the YouTube direction than the feature film direction. I mean, there's a lot of my favorite movies are, pretty popular, but extremely expensive films to make. But my, I don't know, layman's, newbie perspective is there's a lot of money wasted in the film world, and I'm not that interested in wasting money. So, I mean, this kind of jumps ahead a little bit too, but one of the cool things about this project for me was that we didn't really spend any money making it. Like Rob and I just shot it on the cameras that we had. We had a couple trips down to see Jason and chat with him in Philly, and it was just like a lot of sweat investment. I mean, I would love to make a more expensive movie, but it's quite difficult to raise the money to do that.
I think for me, it was just like Kortina. Obviously, I think he's been a big part of just why I like even worked on a few projects at all. But it was we kind of all lived in a close proximity in Oakland for a few years, and we would just like between Kortina and his sister, some friends of ours, we would just make these fun kind of like we made like a fun sitcom type of like thing, and so it was a small group of us that were just sort of learning and more or less playing around. But I think also like as a support group or like just broader group, New York City feels like that to me. And there's a bunch of just indie stuff going on all the time, and it's cool that any given day I can just go out and watch something where the director's giving some interview or something like that. And so not directly involved in that kind of group, but I'm just being in this city, I think you get a little bit of that.
I still have a day job, so my tribe, I'd say, would be just at this point my wife, who encourages me to follow the things that I really want to do in my life, and pushing me to make time for these types of projects.
Okay. What made you decide to make this movie? Was it really just a goof? Like you guys started goofing around and it just became a movie? Like, how did you get here?
Yeah, I mean, Jason and I can kind of tag team this one, but um, I moved back from California to the East Coast, sort of right after the pandemic, and I was down in Philly visiting Jason, and we were getting a beer at this bar called Dirty Frank's, and Jason said something like, "Oh, I need to go charge my phone for like 10 minutes because it only holds the charge for 10 minutes, and nobody else will tolerate using this phone other than me. Everyone else would just like throw it away and get a new one and replace it. But I don't want it to like go to the landfill." And I said, "Oh, it's funny that you're talking about landfills because I'm moving back to New York and I'm trying to figure out how to furnish my new place. And I'm trying to get everything used off of Craigslist, like all the furniture and everything, just because every time I look at a piece of furniture, I just see it ultimately in a landfill." And I've been thinking about mattresses because it's such a huge piece of garbage compared to this iPhone. Um, and it's gonna end up in the garbage, but like bed bugs. And then he said to me he has a story about a mattress, and then I don't know, do you have any things
Yeah,
that
I mean, I think my response was, "Oh, I got a story for you about mattresses. Would you like to hear it?" And I told him the story, essentially, the topic of the film. And I guess he was taken aback by it. I mean, for me, it was, I, in a way that, I was very appalled by, what I experienced in the whole, the topic of the movie. But in a way, it felt very pedestrian to me. So I just, it was just a story that I told, and I thought that that was going to be it, and we would move on to the next discussion. But apparently, it triggered something, or for
Well, yeah, I
Andrew,
mean, I
yeah.
think to me, it struck me as like very Kafkaesque, like this, it's the everyman story for me, right? Like we all have like, well, maybe not all of us, but most of us have different jobs, right? But we're all very much consumers for much of our lives because we spend most of our time doing one thing and then spend money on everything else. And just to me, the idea that somebody would go to such great lengths to try to keep a 2-day old mattress out of a landfill struck me as deeply resonant, particularly, I don't know, given how popular these mattresses are, like everyone kind of knows the deal with them. And it struck me as a really universal story with a lot of humor to it. And the way Jason told it was great. So I was just like, this is a perfect thing for a documentary. We should definitely.
Performance piece, my mattress. All right. All right. So I combine the next two questions. What was the hardest part and what was the most fun part about making this movie?
I think editing was especially tough on this one just because we went down for one main interview and then one kind of like secondary interview, and so we didn't have that much footage. And just sort of like kind of culling that sort of ad hoc conversation into something that would just make sense to other people or kind of get across that impression that this story had on us. I think it just went through a ton of iterations, and just it was only maybe 2.5 hours or something like that. So just finding ways to kind of creatively construct this narrative out of not that much practical stuff. And I think that meant we kind of dragged this on for 2 years or something, just because a little bit we were just sort of stuck. But also just it's hard to get a little bit of motivation through that. But the
Andrew?
fun part was just like hanging out with friends. Like we got to see Jason, who I don't get to see him very often, and Kortina is just. I think the spirit of this was a little bit of just like some friends making a movie together.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, that to me was the best part about this, was just spending time with friends and doing something creative, and building something. I felt for me that the most difficult part, although I wouldn't classify it as difficult, I wasn't aware that I was the actual main subject of this film until I actually saw the final edit, I think, or maybe in the second shoot we did. I thought maybe they were just using my interview as just supplementary material for the bigger message of the film. So for me, I was not clear about that direction at the time, but I thought it was a brilliant move on behalf of the directors, because I think that I would have had came to it with a different perspective, I guess, less organic and natural perspective.
I agree with Rob that the edit was very difficult and took a long time. I think maybe towards the end, maybe we could have done a little bit more to get more pointed about, okay, like what are we still lacking, or what kind of shots do we need to go get? But I have to say, I've been working on some other projects too that had kind of stalled out a little bit towards or I don't know, I wouldn't say stalled, but I was getting frustrated with at the beginning of last year. And then I was like, well, I have this mattress thing, sitting around with Rob and Jason. I can go work on this right now. And so when the time came around to go finish it, I was really grateful to have all this material sitting there. And then it was just really always, cool to go spend more time in this story, because I don't know. I thought it was a fun one, and Jason had a fun way of telling it. Yeah.
What type of filmmaker are you? Are you the type of filmmakers who you finish the project? Yeah, there's a couple of problems. You've learned more, so there's some things you can fix, but you're like, that child's put to bed. I'm going to start working on the next one. Or you always sit there and look at this as your old movies and go, I'm going to redo that one of these days. Which type of filmmakers would you say you guys are?
I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. I think it really kind of came together, especially in the last few rounds of editing that Rob and I did. I don't know. Maybe you can say more about that, Rob, but I feel like something kind of shifted into place at the very end that worked out well.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way. And it's part of why it took so long. I think it was just sort of a slog, and it didn't really feel right until kind of the end, when it really just felt like it came together, and it was really getting across some interesting idea that we wanted to get across. And yeah, I'm super happy with it, and I'm also really pumped to make more stuff too.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the technical chops that these guys have, but I'm secretly wishing that they call me up and say, we want you to be involved in the next project.
Well, we actually, one of the things that was cool about this project was the first conversation, like when we recorded the interview, we had like a 2-hour, 3-hour interview, and it was this really sweeping array of things that we discussed. And there are some other cool things in there that just about like the environment and kids and working hard and trying to do the right thing, that didn't really make it into the film, but chatting about some of that stuff was great. And I don't know, there's stuff in there I think worth sharing with the world for sure.
There you go, Jason. You might have to talk to stuff. It's another movie.
Nice.
All right. So okay, the next question is, we all know that making independent films, we're not going to go out buy mansions and jets and so on and so forth. So what is success? Like, what does success look like in the indie film? Since it's obviously not going to be boatloads of money.
For me, I mean, I'm excited for this festival that we're going to. If one other person comes and sees our film, that'll be great. I'm going to invite a lot of people, and I think many more than that will come. Just getting the word out to don't give up hope and try to still be a good person, I think is the reward.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I love that like one other person sees it as a success. The other thing I would probably add to is just even the process of making it, I think to me is a success. It just like gave us the opportunity to kind of like iron out something that we were thinking about and just try to communicate it. And I think just going through that was pretty gratifying in itself.
Yeah, I mean, for me, not that I went into this with any kind of expectation, but seeing the final product, I guess for me, the answer to the question would be if it has just impacts one other person to take action in some way, whether it means picking up a piece of trash or even thinking about how they exist in relation to the physical world and consuming goods, or even if it's inspiring somebody else to go out there and make a film about something that could potentially affect another person. That to me would be a success.
Okay, cool. So let's say somebody comes along and goes, "Hi, Uncle Andrew, Uncle Rob, Uncle Jason. I'm going to be a filmmaker just like you." What would be your response? What would you say to them?
Why? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, that's
I'm just kidding. No, but really, why? Because I think you have to have a compelling answer to that, to warrant the amount of time and effort it takes, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, I would echo that and just say, I don't know. I also have never been a huge fan of needing to distribute like creative work as a means to pay my rent, because I'm just worried about the ethical compromises that could lead to, and I would probably recommend anyone who wants to make I don't know, like quote unquote real art, question whether or not you want to bet your rent on that.
I mostly disagree with those two.
Okay, guys. Listen, thanks. That was great. The movie is called Telling Mattress Stories. It's going to be shown at the New York City Independent Film Festival at the Producers Club. I hope to see you all there.